This is permadeath. It's one of the essential features that makes a Fire Emblem game, well, a Fire Emblem game. Or is it? In a Fire Emblem game, you only get so many units, or characters, and you have to utilize their strengths and weaknesses carefully. For example, a sword user is stronger against an axe user, whereas a lance is stronger against a sword. Defined by Oxford Dictionary as a situation in which characters cannot reappear after having been killed. You can fail a mission and the game will continue, with permanent death for any soldiers lost in battle. Permanence was originally a stable mechanic for the first 20 years of the Fire Emblem franchise. The problem with it, or benefit depending on how you look at it, is that it makes the game frustratingly difficult at times. For example, there are 28 units in Fire Emblem Awakening. You can use an average of about 10 to 12 units per battle, so should a significant number of them die at any point during the almost 30-hour-long game, you're basically screwed. On top of that, not every unit works the same. Some are better with magic, some can only use magic, some are better with axes, and some are better with swords. You get the idea. While most games allow you to get new units throughout the story, they don't have the same traits as the ones you lost. Nobody is 100% replaceable. Some games even allow you to let your units love each other and have children which can be deployed in the battle, which is another feature for another day, but point being, while you can definitely get new characters as you play, there is still always a finite number of them, and permadeath is always looming on top of your head. Starting from the very first game, Fire Emblem Shadow Dragon and Blade of Light in 1990, all the way to 2010's Fire Emblem New Mystery of the Emblem, which was ironically a remake of the sequel to the aforementioned game, the only way to play a Fire Emblem game was with permadeath. During the development of 2012's Fire Emblem Awakening, that all changed. As many know, Awakening was meant to be the very last Fire Emblem game if it received poor sales. As a result, the developers threw in as much content as they could, including the brand new casual mode, in which units don't permanently die if they fall in combat. This change was probably the single most controversial thing to ever be added to any game in the franchise, and divided the fanbase to this very day, where it has been seen in every game since Awakening, and into 2019's Fire Emblem Three Houses. It's even divided the franchise into an old era, ranging from Shadow Dragon and the Blade of Light to New Mystery of the Emblem, and the modern era, ranging from Awakening onwards. At its core, Fire Emblem is about one thing: war. And if you know war, it's not exactly the greatest thing to come back from. In real wars, people don't just come back after they fall in battle, they die. Many believe that the old Fire Emblem games perfectly portrayed that, whereas all that is thrown out of the window in the new era. In the new games, poor choices don't have as much consequence as they did before. You can definitely suck off a good character to defeat a tough enemy, and not face injuries in future levels like before. The significant drop in challenge led many fans of the old games to despise the newer games and the fans that follow them. This has led to a divide in the Fire Emblem community, and an unprecedented amount of toxicity and gatekeeping from older fans towards the newer players. To add to the fire, 2017's Fire Emblem Echoes added a feature called Milla's Turnwheel, which allows players to reverse time if they made a bad move or died from an unlucky critical hit. While most players enjoy the addition of the Turnwheel, which returned under a different name in Three Houses, it still brought new amounts of hate to casual mode. Regardless of fan reception, two things are abundantly clear. Casual mode is here to stay, as it's been a feature for 4 games now, counting Fate's Birthright, Fate's Conquest, and Fate's Revolution as one game, and that it will always remain just an option, never the default mode. Interestingly, elements of classic mode still remain in casual mode, and vice versa. In a Fire Emblem game, the protagonist, whether preset like Alm, or the avatar you create like Corrin, is known as the Lord. In Awakening and Echoes, you'll still receive a game over if the Lord dies while playing in casual mode, despite the fact that casual mode would have brought them back after battle. On the other end of the spectrum, some special units in classic mode, excluding the Lord, will remain in the story upon in-battle death. The canonical reasoning for this is that the characters sustain injuries so grand that they would never touch a battlefield again. This is dumb. Do you really mean to tell me that Azura is quote-unquote gravely injured when I can very clearly see her performing an intricate dance while waterbending to an extent so grand that she made an ancient king visibly uncomfortable? I highly doubt it. I think this feature is something they added in afterwards and it wasn't very well thought out. Some would argue the series has catered too much to casual mode players. The games aren't built around classic mode anymore, they're built for a more general audience. While Fire Emblem elitists can simply not play casual mode, they can't ignore the catering that the difficulty has towards it. All of this came to a fault with 2015's Fire Emblem Fates. In addition to casual and classic mode, a third difficulty was added: Phoenix mode. In Phoenix mode, characters that fall in combat will simply just show up the next turn with full health and resume the fight like normal with zero consequences for their previous quote-unquote death. Elitists and newbies can argue all they want, but the addition of Phoenix mode was essentially wrong to the conventions not only previously set for the franchise, but the game design as a whole. When creating a game, you have to balance the factors of risk and reward in a way that makes the player engaged, pun not intended, with what they're doing. Phoenix mode removes all of the challenge from the game. On a notoriously difficult map, such as one of Three Houses' final bosses, even a casual player may consider resetting the game to the start of the battle to recuperate from the loss they just suffered, which is a practice performed very often by classic mode players. By playing in Phoenix mode, you become, well, an unstoppable Phoenix, and you would have to try really hard to get a game over, as Fates allows the Lord to fall in battle on casual or Phoenix mode without giving the player a game over. This is not representative of war in the slightest, and this was made abundantly clear, as Phoenix mode did not return for Fire Emblem Echoes or Fire Emblem Three Houses. The advent of permadeath is brilliant. It forces the player to make trade-offs that have a lasting impact on the game. Should you sacrifice a strong unit to defeat a tough boss? Is that one life worth securing victory for? In Classic mode, every decision you make counts. However, though I've been referring to them as units this entire time, these people are characters. They have their own wants, their needs, their likes, their dislikes, romances, anything a real person has. It isn't at all easy to let go of the lives of these characters. Just imagine how Tatiana would feel if she found out that Zeke had died in battle trying to save her. Therefore, not every gamer is willing to deal with the emotions of permanently losing one of their favorite characters, while some other gamers gain a thrill from narrowly avoiding death and winning by the skin of their teeth. I'm not gonna lie, it's exciting. That's why the choice between classic and casual is so important. It's because different types of gamers enjoy different levels of difficulty. Some enjoy the story more than the high stakes and honestly confusing gameplay. Many of the character stats can be lucrative at points, it's not very clear without a guide what some things do. According to Fire Emblem Awakening project manager Masahiro Higuchi, while permadeath is a part of the series, it's also something that I think keeps a lot of people from trying the game. That's not good for us if people don't even pick it up to see what other kind of things we put into the game. And in the end, we did get a lot of feedback from people who tried Awakening because of casual mode, so in that respect, I'm glad it's there, but I still play in classic mode myself. At the end of the day, intelligent systems, the creators of Fire Emblem, are a business. Businesses have to appeal to a vast market. Classic mode doesn't exactly catch a wide-stream audience with its high skill ceiling, and honestly sometimes unfair deaths. It's entirely possible for a random bandit to get a 2% critical hit and instantly kill one of your favorite units. Sales figures show that the removal of forced permadeath does help the game sell better. New Mystery of the Emblem reportedly sold 270,000 copies in Japan, where it was exclusively released and not localized into other languages. This marks the lowest number of sales ever reported for a game in the franchise. On the other hand, Awakening, New Mystery of the Emblem's successor and the first game worldwide to have casual mode, sold 520,000 copies in Japan alone, and a combined 1,900,000 copies across the globe. Of course, not all of that success could be attributed to casual mode, but it definitely made the series more available to a wider audience. Oh boy, time to piss off everybody in the comment section. Here we go. I personally, the guy making this very video about permadeath, have never completed a Fire Emblem game in classic mode. Personally, I just don't find classic mode to be fun. As previously mentioned, it certainly has both benefits and flaws, but I at the end of the day value a game for its atmosphere and its immersion, not its gameplay, despite that being a huge factor. If you can put me in a game's world with its writing and its characters, that has me actually care about what happens to them, that's what I consider a successful game. I know there are many Fire Emblem players that share a similar sentiment. Genki Yokota, Awakening's co-director, said in an interview, "Believe it or not, I now play exclusively in casual mode." But like Higuchi-san said, some of the fun of Fire Emblem does lie in the possibility that you can lose a member permanently at any time. Both approaches have their advantages, so it's hard to say what direction we'll take next time. This brings me to my favorite Fire Emblem game, and my third favorite game of all time behind Persona 5 Royal and Xenoblade Chronicles 1, Fire Emblem Echoes, Shadows of Valentia. The remake of 1992's Fire Emblem Gaiden.
I even have a poster of it that watches me when I go to sleep every night.
This game is amazing in almost every sense of the word. The story, the characters, the music, everything, well, besides the gameplay. For those who aren't aware, Echoes is considered the black sheep of the franchise. It doesn't have the same features as other games, such as the removal of weapon durability, or different and objectively bad map design. Regardless, Echoes is one game I think every person should play. It enveloped me in its world amazingly, and managed to make me actually feel for the story of Alm and Celica. When they cried, I cried. When they smiled, I smiled. Ask anyone I knew in 8th grade. They'll tell you I went nuts for this game. Seriously. It's just Romeo and Juliet with swords and magic. Oh, and giant dragon gods. It's amazing. Had this game been released earlier and without casual mode, I don't know if I'd have ever picked it up, more or less been able to recommend it to such a wide variety of people. It's the ease of difficulty that allows me to just hand my 3DS to a friend and allow them to have that same experience I did. Casual mode just allows everybody to play a Fire Emblem game. At the end of the day, casual mode has and most likely will always be just an option. It allows more players to come to the series and enjoy what it has to offer without playing with serious risk all the time. It's okay to play casual mode, and it's okay to play classic mode. Just please don't play Fates in Phoenix mode, just please. Also, without the stress of having to write these games with the knowledge that any side character can die at any time, the writers of the modern era games are able to tell much more complex stories with these characters, knowing that they can be seen by a wider array of people. There are indeed ways to play the older games without the stress of permadeath. Some games include mods that have their own features, or you can always play with save states, just don't abuse them to death. As these games were made in mind to have a level of significant challenge to them, but like it or not, they are indeed hard games. Looking ahead, I have no doubt that next year's Fire Emblem Engage will come with an option for casual and classic mode, and another renaming of the Miller's turn wheel system. Hopefully, as time goes on, the elitist minority of Fire Emblem fans will stop harassing the new players, and will finally allow them to enjoy the game for what it's really worth.
That's it for me. I still have more to do, after all.